When I got that first check in my hand, it was like for $8,000, right? I was like, oh, this is what's up. I was like, I had never seen anything like that. That at that point, that's when it became real to me. I was like, oh, this is a real opportunity right here. This is like I can actually make some real money with this.
Yo, back again for another episode of Attractive Mindset. Today, we got a super special guest. I got the pleasure of meeting him when we went to the Circle of CEOs convention in Atlanta in September. And this man is nothing short of greatness. This man has already taught me a lot in just a short amount of time that I've known him. But I brought him here today just so he could talk to y'all more of a category that doesn't really get talked about enough, but there's definitely money to be made in it. And so there's no other special person better than Mr. Brett Anthony.
Hey, I greatly appreciate it, man. That's a hell of an intro. I greatly appreciate that.
Thank you.
Awesome, man. Well, appreciate you having me on here today. I don't exactly know the format. I know we can edit that, but just let me know however you want to take it, and then we can go from there. All right.
Okay. Yeah. So it's just, basic straight up conversation. We're just going to talk about the ins and out, how you even get to where you are now, just background history and what got you into that. So, tell us first a little bit about your company. What do you do?
Okay. Yeah. So, like you said, my name is Brett Anthony Bryant. What I do pretty much is I help homeowners get their roofs approved by their insurance company and any other property damage that they have as well. But not just doing that, or aside from doing that, we also manage the entire project on the back end when it comes to dealing with the contracting side. So we help facilitate that with our vetted contractors. So it takes away the stress of the homeowners not only dealing with the insurance company, but also needing to deal with finding contractors, going online, taking a shot in the dark, seeing at which contractors are going to actually be truthful and be good at what they do.
Okay. And so that's an interesting category, because how does somebody just one day be like, yeah, I want to do roofing and stuff like that? Like, how did you get into it?
It absolutely did not happen like that. It was completely by chance or by luck. So what happened was, after getting fired from T-Mobile for my job back in like 2014? Yeah, 2014, 2015. At the time, I had the skill set of buying and selling phones. I used to fix phones for Sprint as well. And so I started, getting into the cell phone repair business again on my own. The idea was to create this mobile phone repair system that would take over the world. Unfortunately, thanks to Apple and all the other big tech people, that didn't happen. Just can't compete at that level with them once they started getting into the repair field. So my business didn't do too well. I even got a brick and mortar store that got broken into, and I lost a bunch of money in that. So needless to say, I was a little stressed. But while I was there, or while I had my store, I was working on getting my real estate license. So I ended up getting my real estate license, and I'm ready to go into this whole brand new field thinking, okay, well, everybody says they make money in real estate. Why don't I go ahead and, be an agent, not knowing that's the lowest level of making money in real estate, right? Or not the most lucrative way of making it starting out. Let me put it that way. And so I get into it, and then I realize, okay, I have zero money for marketing. How in the world am I going to get, how am I going to pay my bills? Because at this time, I'm a full grown adult. Nobody else is going to cover my bills for me. So while, pursuing that, while trying to work on that, I was starting a clothing brand online, right? It sounds like a lot, right? I was starting a clothing brand online that was in the field of skateboarding. I love skateboarding. I've been skateboarding for a long time. I was at the park one day, and one of my friends, he was like, well, what are you doing right now? We were skating and stuff. And he's like, I was like, well, I just got into real estate. I was still buying and selling phones at the time to pay the bills. And he was like, well, I got this roofing thing. You might be interested in that. I was like, roofing? What are you talking about? I don't know anything about roofs. It's like, I almost brushed it off because it didn't seem like anything that was realistic. But then we were at dinner one time, and after skating, and he showed me a check for $16,000. Now, up until that point, I hadn't seen that much money at one point in time, like any type of legitimate check or anything like that, from like $16,000. So I didn't believe it, honestly. I'm not gonna lie. But as one of our other mutual friends, had spoken, he's like, he seems to, be doing well for himself. I can't, speak on any details as to what he does and make sure it's legitimate and all that stuff. So eventually I ended up saying, well, let me, investigate and find out some more about this. He ended up saying, oh, well, look, I'll teach you, how to go out and knock doors and, get clients, right? Which I didn't have a problem with doing that. I had knocked doors before when I was a kid. And so started knocking doors, eventually got my first client. But before that, he was paying me to manage some of the jobs that he had or supervise, which at the time I was like, bro, I don't know anything about supervising roof. He's like, oh, you don't need to. You don't need to. It's like, all you need to do is just be there on the roof. The guys are going to do their job because they know somebody else is there, watching. Right. And so he would pay me $250 per roof to do that. And so that helped me get by a little bit. And I was end up taking a night job in Tampa, working overnight. So driving an hour and a half from Orlando to Tampa at about, what time was that? I was leave at like 7 o'clock. No, I take that back. Sorry. I would leave at like 4 or 5 o'clock because of traffic, and then get there around 6, 7 and work until about midnight, get back home at like 1:30. And now wake up 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, start trying to work on this business, knocking doors, getting clients. After I finally got my first client, I thought it was off to the races. Unfortunately, that first client that I got, the the roofing company fucked up, and apologies.
You're good.
Okay, that roofing company didn't execute as properly like they should have. I ended up losing money on my first deal that I was supposed to actually make money on. So now I'm back to square one, still working at a job at night, right? And then eventually my next client that came through, we shifted roofing companies that we were partnered with. And then when I got that first check in my hand, it was like for $8,000, right? I was like, oh, this is what's up. I was like, I had never seen anything like that. At that point, that's when it became real to me. I was like, oh, this is a real opportunity right here. This is like, I can actually make some real money with this, So at that point, I was just like, well, let me put all my focus and intention into trying to make this thing work. So that's kind of how it got started.
Okay, and so from you starting it to you getting that $8,000 check, how long would you say that took?
So me supervising his jobs, I'll remember it was at the beginning of January of 20, what was that? 2017. It's about January 2017. I started supervising the roof jobs. I actually got that client, the first client where it didn't follow through. I ended up getting that client, I want to say in March or April. Took me about 2 months of knocking doors, and I finally got a client, finally got it approved by the insurance company on all that stuff. And then in August is when they went to actually build out the roof. They happened to build it during a hurricane season, right? And they just happened to leave shingles off the roof, flooded the whole house, lost a ton of money, right? And so um I think it was about October. If I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, either September or October of that year is when I had gotten that first check. And I was like, man, this is real. So
Okay, so
actually I take that back. I had gotten a smaller check before that. Excuse me. I gotten a smaller check before that, right? But I had to pay him back the money that he was loaning me to rent a car, because the car that I had, and I just remembered the car that I had, it was an old Honda Accord that had the window that went halfway down on the driver's side, right? Or that was stuck down. And so to go out and knock doors, obviously I couldn't take that car into these nice neighborhoods and knock doors and let people say, hey, let me work on, getting your roof approved, and you got this crappy Honda. So I would rent cars on Turo, and he would loan me the money, and then I had to pay that back. So one of my first checks was like 3 or 4 grand, but it was a partial check. So, but then this was the first full check I had gotten from a job. And that one, I want to say that check, if I'm not mistaken, it was about December. November, December is when I got that check. And that's when I was like, let's go. All right, let's get it. And then from there, man, it was just like, let's go, let's go. I ended up getting a deal with a property management company. It was just, man, it was good.
Okay, so it took about like 7 months for you to get your first real check within the business. And so,
Yeah.
and up until that 7 months, did you have any thoughts like, man, this shit don't work, I'm not gonna
Absolutely.
do this?
Oh yeah, 100%. You know what's crazy? What happened? So up until this point, my boy John, I told you I skateboarded, so the majority of the people I hung out with were in the skate scene, they were Caucasian. They're just gonna be real, but they were cool. I don't have any problem with anybody from any race. I get along with people from anybody that knows me. Most of my friends are international anyway, so I get along with everybody. But when I ended up on one of the jobs that I was supervising, it wasn't his roof. It was somebody else that he was kind of like like understudying as well, or that he was mentoring, I guess you could say, or mentoring as well. And I called him because I was supervising that roof. And I was like, hey, he was talking about some stuff about the job or whatever. And I noticed the tone of his voice. I was like, oh, this dude's black. I was like, hey, let me ask him what's up. I was like, bro, is it true that we actually could make this much money in this business? He's like, yeah, actually, the roof that you're supervising, I'm making 9 grand on that one right now. I was like, what? I was like, all right, bet. So at this time, I was already knocking doors, but I wasn't. I was a little doubtful, as to how real it was, because until you actually get the money inside your hand, so you kind of are walking by faith. You know what I mean? So that's when it made it real, and I was like, okay, that now we got something to work with.
Okay. And so was that your first real introduction to entrepreneurship outside of you trying to do the phone repair?
No, so my first quote unquote, like, I guess it depends on what you define real, but my first entrepreneurship endeavor was at the age of 12.
Hmm.
So when I used to skateboard, or when I first started getting into skateboarding, I was 12 years old, and I lived in Clarksville, Tennessee. My family was a normal family, didn't have pretty much didn't have really any resources. I'm not gonna lie. Somehow my mother made it seem like we were okay, but yeah, from looking back on it in retrospect now, no, we were definitely lower middle class. And um, so she didn't have money to buy like the skateboards I wanted. I wanted a professional skateboard. I wanted the shoes and all that stuff. So she's like, yeah, you had to figure it out yourself. So I ended up taking the lawnmower that we had. Luckily, we lived in Tennessee. There was plenty of grass to cut there. So I ended up going out knocking doors, cut grass. I remember that first weekend, I think I made like $100, cutting 4 lawns, $25 each, $100, or sorry, yeah, it was 4 lawns, $25 each. I made like $100, and I was able to buy the Chad Muska skateboard that I wanted. I was super hyped. So then I was like, oh man, this is onto something. So then that's how I kept, providing for myself and getting those skateboards, the clothes, and all that stuff, because it's a whole culture around it, right? So I started getting all the stuff that I wanted simply by going out cutting grass. But then when I became the age of, I think it was 15 or 16, whenever you're legal age to get a quote unquote job, I remember I got a job at Sonic, and after working in that environment, and I want to say it was like 3 months. Looking at the checks, I was like, man, this is not for me. So that's kind of where I figured out, like, entrepreneurship is definitely not for me. I always envisioned myself of doing things much on a much larger scale than what people tell you that you can do.
Okay, so that's definitely the consistency of time going from 12 years old, starting that for yourself and scaling into that. And so have you done a lot of personal development to, between you doing that and getting into your roofing business?
A ton of personal development. And one of the things I think a lot of people don't consider is that personal development is a non like it doesn't stop. That's something that once you, especially if you take it serious, once you get into it, there's no end to personal development, because there's always something that we can get better at. So it doesn't matter whether it's health, your relationships, what do you call it, your finances, your overall, being, how you carry yourself. There's always something that we can improve on. So, but yes, it was a journey. I didn't catch on to it until later on, as far as how to develop yourself personally. And so after reading the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, which, had I had read it at the time that it was first presented to me, I could have shifted the time clock. But you got to bump your head. You got to, try to. I was always so focused on, I'm going to do stuff on my own, figure it out myself, versus taking guidance. And so definitely one of the things I've learned is that sometimes it is good to take guidance. Just make sure you're getting it from the right person.
Okay, yeah, definitely love that. So now let's get into the nitty gritty. And
Oh,
so on a high end, what do those checks look like now? Now you solidified in the business,
right.
what would somebody that's new going into that business, or if they wanted to get started in that business, what would they have to look forward to?
So there's a lot of variables into it, that plays into it. Number one, we are dealing with insurance claims, and specifically getting money from insurance carriers. And on the back end, it depends upon what type of deal you have set up with your contractors. Roofing is the main business, even though, yes, I can generate income from dealing with interior, dealing with pool screens, doing all these other things, but everything stems from the primary claim, which is the roof claim, right? So that varies. It depends upon what state you're in, what the current price per square is. But if they're following like what I try to teach my people, First off, we don't go for small jobs. We normally go for houses that are normally, when it comes to the residential, we deal with houses that are on the mid to larger size income. There's a few reasons for that, but and normally typically you're dealing with a different type of clientele. So that type of clientele is normally going to be a lot easier to work with, but also too, you're able to get more money out of the insurance company. Now, depending upon your roofer that you're working with and the price, price that you guys have set up, then that could vary. So to give you a number, all that to say, if you're following what I tell you and you're following it to a T, it should be on the low end about 5 grand on average, up until about 10 grand average. Now, obviously, when I say average, it can be a little bit less than that. It could be more than that. I have some jobs. I actually have a job next month that I'll be making like 18 grand on. But then I also have jobs sometimes where, hey, here's a good example. I had a client. He had a decent sized roof and everything. I literally made no money on it, right? But I asked him, I said, hey, send me referrals, give me more people inside your neighborhood, because I knew the neighborhood was good, even though he had a crazy policy and then we weren't able to actually make any money on the deal. I could think from that one client, I probably made over at least 120K just from that one client, from referrals alone.
And so that's super important. I want you to reiterate on that. You took somebody that you didn't get paid on and you leveraged that in order to spread the word through a community. So talk about that. What was your plan behind that, like in deeper depth?
So the plan was this. I could tell he was a good guy. We had a connection. He actually genuinely needed help. And sometimes we got to do stuff to help people, even if we're not getting any type of monetary or immediate benefit from it right away. But it was one hand shaking the other. I knew that if he sent me more people inside the neighborhood, then I could make money, right? And on top of it, I'm still going to pay him a referral. So it incentivized him as well. So my idea was just, well, let me see if I can help him out, and if worst come to worst, I get a couple clients, and even if I were to get one client, it still made up for it. You know what I mean? Because of the profit margins. So that was the idea, and then come to find out, long term, created a new, friendship, new relationship. So much so to where literally the same client just sent me somebody new a few weeks ago. I want to say about a month ago. So yeah, and it's paying dividends. That was what, 3-4 years ago.
And so it's still, benefiting a connection that you made essentially for free. People have to understand that free isn't necessarily free. Just because you don't get monetary value for it, you may get it in other ways, which is exactly what you did. And so on average, how many jobs do you say, or like, if you call it that, like how many claims do you get per month?
It depends on how hard I'm going and how many referrals I'm getting. Because my business is heavily referral based. I just now started getting into more marketing, my business personally. But I would say on average 5 to 10 claims, sometimes 7 to 10 claims. It just all depends. But on average, 5 to 10 claims. On slower months, 3 claims.
Okay, and so I'll let them do the numbers behind the camera. If he said the average can go anywhere from 5 to 10 grand, and he may do 3 to 5 claims a month. Y'all do the math on that.
Oh, 5 to 10 grand, by the way, my average is 7 to 10 grand, just because of the way I have my system worked out, who I'm working with, my PA, he knows my numbers, the roofer, what I have to deal with them. But I say 5 grand to be conservative to most people. But for me, I'm almost always going for 7 to 10 grand at least. So
okay, even better. And you know why that's important to him and why that's an important statement? Because he actually has a masterclass. And so in this masterclass, he's able to teach you how to scale business to these levels. And so I want to give him a treat real quick. Just give me like a quick synopsis. I know it's a whole course that, you would have to go over, but if I'm somebody that wanted to get into the business, what are like the first 2 or 3 steps that I would have to take in order to really get into? Because just like you said, you didn't know anything about it when you first got in. And so if somebody wanted to come in under your shoes and you were bringing in people like that, how would you set them up now?
Okay, great question. So to get started now, it's funny that you asked that, because when I started developing it, I was thinking, okay, let me go back and think about how would I do this from zero, but having the knowledge of what I have now, right? To get into it, aside from the basic, like setting up an LLC and things of that nature, which is very important, because if you're going to go and do business with other businesses, because essentially you are the middleman, right? So between the roofing company, between the homeowner and the insurance company, they're not going to do business with an individual. So you got to have that. So let's set that basis, that established. So assuming that you already know that you need to have an LLC and all of those things set up, the first thing that you would need to do is go out and establish a relationship with a roofer, right? With the roofer, you're going to negotiate a deal based on the price per square. Once you guys have that negotiated, then you're going to want to speak with a public adjuster or a PA. With the PA, they're going to be the ones that's going to help manage the front end of the claim. Before, I used to be the one personally going and getting on the roofs myself, inspecting, doing all those things. But now in my course or in my system, I teach people you don't have to do that. We work with the PAs. They take a 20% fee on average per claim, but they're able to get on the roofs and manage the part of dealing with calling the insurance companies and dealing with them versus you taking your time to do that. So now once you have those connections established between those two integral partners, right? Now you can go out and start getting clients. Now, how do you get clients? Well, there's a couple of ways. First off, my business, I was primarily targeting realtors because of this. Number one, realtors, they already have the clientele. They already have access to them. So if they've been selling houses, let's say a realtor did, 15, 30 transactions, 100 transactions in a year, that's 100 potential clients that they can talk to, especially if that roof is old. So now they have 100 potential clients that they can market to just to get it started. Same thing with solar sales reps. If you have a solar deal where the client has an old roof, chances are they more than likely have storm related damages on it. You can get them approved by the insurance company, and then you're off to the races. Now, if you're just someone coming fresh out the gate without any access to any homeowners, it would be a little bit more difficult. It's not impossible. Obviously, I did it. You just have to take some time to dedicate to actually going out, pounding the doors, getting on the doors and going out talking to people, right? Seeing who's within your network. If you're a little bit older, you may already know people that own homes. Talk to the people that you already know that own homes. Once you get that going, the next thing that you would need is just to start delegating those things, setting up some back end systems as far as your DocuSign, setting up what else is it? Application, your CRM software, all these different things you will start setting up to be able to make everything flow seamlessly on the back end.
Okay, and you teach all of this in the master course.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. And so you said you don't really do too much advertising. You're starting to scale into that. And so when you talk about your network, how do you have that conversation with these people? Like, where do you even meet these people to have these conversations with?
So when I say marketing, in the sense of maybe I misspoke. I meant more so social media marketing, things of that nature.
Got it.
Because when I'm in a neighborhood, I'm of course marketing. I'm knocking on doors. I was sending out letters and things like that to other neighbors. That's actually a tip that I normally keep to myself. But sending out letters is a certain way to do it in a certain timing, especially if you have a project going on. Putting out yard signs, doing all the traditional direct marketing or what they call guerrilla marketing, right? But now being more strategic and using digital marketing, using other creative marketing strategies, that's more so what I've been investing into now. But how would someone, to answer your question, how would someone, I'm assuming you're saying how would someone start getting into marketing
Well, how
for
would
that?
they like have a conversation with somebody in their network in order to get the
Gotcha.
leads?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. You let them know first. They got to understand what you're doing or know what you're doing. Say, hey, by the way, I've been helping out some homeowners or some clients getting their roofs approved by the insurance company for a brand new roof replaced, and the only thing that comes out of pocket is your insurance deductible. When's the last time you've had your roof checked out?
Got it. Okay.
And chances are nobody gets on the roof, or very few people do. And even if they did, they don't know what to look for when it comes to storm damage, because a lot of people think that your roof has to be falling apart, or it has to be obvious, or a hurricane has to have passed in order to get it approved. Nope. We've been working, since I think all of 2019, 20, and 21 before we had this recent hurricane, making money every single month. And we didn't even use hurricanes. Actually, I prefer to do claims that are not tied to or related to a hurricane because the deductibles are much lower. So that means the homeowner pays less money out of pocket. So it's normally easier to work with them in that sense.
Okay, that's good. And so from starting in 2017, you said, going from March to October is when you made your first $8,000 check.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take you to scale your business to a 6-figure threshold where you've made 6 figures from the company?
Hmm. Well, that you know what? I gotta think about that because normally I only like to look at net. I don't like to look at gross. So I'm pretty sure I hit 6 figure gross way before I did net. But when I actually realized that I put 6 figures in my pocket, I want to say it was closer towards the end of 2018, if I'm not mistaken. I had, I have all the taxes and all that stuff, so I had to go through and look at my accounting stuff just to verify that or to double check on that. But I want to say it was within that year. I think I hit that year of 2018. Yeah, because that's when I went to Cuba. Yeah, I want to say it was within 2018 is when I hit the first 6 figures.
Okay,
But
yeah.
I didn't realize it because at the time too, I'm not gonna lie, I started blowing a bunch of money on video gear and camera equipment and stuff because had other business endeavors. As soon as I started making money, I was like, okay, how can I invest this into another business? But then I realized as well that I needed to focus real quick, take a a year or two or however long to really focus on the business, and then that's when it really started taking off. And then when COVID hit, then it just took it to a whole nother level as well.
Mm.
I was just 100% focused.
And so let's talk about that. When COVID hit, how did that affect your business? Did it help positively or negatively?
Man, so here, this is what happened. We understand we're in Florida. So for us, Florida, COVID lasted for about a month and a half, I want to say. Maybe not even. Well, at least in Orlando. So I remember thinking about that. I was like, shoot, how am I going to get new business? Like, if I really want to push, are people going to be receptive to me going out knocking doors? Like, what's going to happen? So I think I stayed in the house for about a week or two. And I was like, nah, this is not going to work. So I just went out. I remember I had a job that was going up because construction still had to go on. Business still had to go on, right? I already had claims that were in the works. So once they got approved, we had to put the roof on. So I remember there was one neighborhood where I had gotten one neighbor. The next thing you know, that neighbor referred me to like two people in the neighborhood. Then I sent out letters. I got another one. Then also while I was in that neighborhood, I was still going out. I would go talk to. I went to go talk to one lady. She was like in the yard or whatever. Talked to her. Boom, got that client. Then while I was working there, one of the clients I got, they saw my signs all over her street, and she's like, "What's going on here?" So she stopped me while I was out there, doing getting photos and stuff like that, marketing stuff. And she's like, "Hey, what's going on here?" Ended up getting her. Next thing you know, I ended up getting like that whole like block, and that right there just propelled me to a whole nother level. And then at the same time during COVID, I remember I got another client in another neighborhood, a high-end neighborhood in Orlando. And I told that client, I could tell he was kind of like a money guy. He liked making money. And I knew these were all high-end houses that I was going to make great commission. So I told him, I was like, look, for each client that you give me inside your neighborhood, I'll give you $1,000 because they were huge roofs. I was like, bro, I can make some money on this. So I think on his job, we made like $16,000, right?
Wow.
So I was like, cool, I'll pay him $1,000 for each job. That's not going to hurt me. So I want to say, no lie, he probably sent me about 15 jobs.
Jeez.
So he got $15,000. You guys can do the math. I got a decent amount out of that. So, and on top of that, that allowed me to take over that section, that block. Now in that neighborhood, people know now you have like an authority in that neighborhood because they've seen you enough. So people get familiar with your brand. So now they're more inclined, where if I send out more marketing stuff in that neighborhood, now they're more inclined to do business with me versus someone else because they're familiar with it.
That's super interesting. And so, how, you know, a question that I would have to ask then is, how competitive is this market? How many different companies are there that do what you do?
So in the realm of loss consultant, meaning that I'm not the licensed roofer, nor am I a licensed public adjuster. I want to make sure we make that clear because there is a difference between the two, and you cannot practice unlicensed public adjusting or a roofer. However, my contracts are with the roofers, so essentially I'm like an independent consultant for the roofing company. Now, there are people that work for roofing companies that do what I do or similar to what I do, right? But they work for the roofing company. They're not independent. And then on top of that, they may or may not work with the insurance claims side themselves. So in the loss consultant space, I've only met a few people that do kind of what I do, and they I definitely don't do it in the same manner or at the same level that we do it on. So it is relatively really niche, specifically what I do, but there are people that are public adjusters that only handle like the claim side, but then they don't, but after the adjusting is done, after the claim is approved, they don't deal with the whole back end process of Now the homeowner, they get a check from their public adjuster or from their attorney in some states. They get the check, and now they're like, okay, well, I got this $40,000 check. Now what do I do with it? Most time homeowners are going to look at it. They're going to try to get the cheapest person, get the work done. They're going to go blow the rest, right? Or but the people that actually want to get the work done, now they're like, okay, well, how do I find a quality contractor? Now they got to spend a bunch of their time, right, to go and find contractors, to go test them out. They got to get all these estimates. They got to do all this stuff. Most people that come to me is because they don't want to spend the time doing all that. They want one person to deal with and talk to, right, or one company to deal with and talk to, that's just going to manage the entire project for them from the
Got
beginning
it.
to the end.
So
So
you're
it's
like a
not
professional middleman.
100%.
Got it. Hey, there's power in that. Being a
100%.
professional middleman is the way to go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, to answer your question, I haven't found many people, even at some of the conventions. It's normally either they are roofers, working for a roofing company, or they're public adjusters or attorneys and things of that nature. And then more so, what the real advantage to a lot, what I just found out after this recent hurricane, is that the way to describe my business or what I do, more so than just a middleman, think of it this way. This is how I explain it to homeowners, because they seem to get confused as to my business. And it took me a while to understand it as well, or how to articulate it. And the way I think of it is like this. Let's say you have a band, right? And you play the trumpet, someone over here plays the oboe, somebody else plays the bass, and somebody else plays the piano. Individually, they may all sound great. They may be great at what they're doing, right? But imagine if they all started playing a bunch of random notes at the wrong time. It'd sound like chaos. It'd sound like mess, right?
Yeah.
They need somebody to direct them. Well, I'm the band director. I'm the one who puts everything together so you can get the finished product to get to actually enjoy, which would be the music, or in this case, would be a claim where everything worked in sync. So first you got the water mitigation that comes in. The water mitigation company, if it's a large loss, that's going to take care of the tarping. That's going to take care of drying out the home, and then you have to deal with the tree removal services if you need that. Anything that's on the landscaping on the outside, and then you got to deal with the public adjuster that's going to go in and document everything. You also too, throughout this entire process, everything has to be documented exquisitely. You have to do everything very, very detailed. You have to have detailed documentation. That way, by the time you contact your insurance carrier, because a lot of people think you have to contact your insurance carrier first. No, it's the other way around. You need to document everything, get in contact with these professionals first, right? Get a mold assessment done just in case. You need to get all these documentation, all these things done, because this is what happens when you have all that ready and you go to present this to the insurance company, and the field adjuster comes out there. Pretty much, you've already done their job for them. And so now it makes it easier, or much easier, for them to write a check, and quicker for the desk adjuster to approve it, because there's two different types of adjusters that are normally on each claim. So now they're able to go ahead and get those approved much quicker, because you've already pretty much done all the work for them. So compared to 10 other files that they have where they have to do everything themselves, or they got this one file where it's like, boom, everything's all itemized, everything's cut out, they're going to approve it much easier. And normally they're going to agree to your estimate much quicker than if you just send them some random Joe Blow estimate and you don't have any data or documentation to back it up and prove it.
Y'all pretty much can call him Neo because he seems to be the one. He's the one that got all the answers, got all the everything. And so that's good. That's good. And so how much would you say your company nets a year, revenues a year, about estimate roughly?
Roughly, last year was like 475, 480. It was close to 500. This year, I know, well, it depends upon once the claims are finished, because I have one claim, actually, the attorney just called me today that we've been working over a year on. But depends upon when the claims are finished, should be around 600. But now that I've learned more of the internet marketing side of things, and I have a new system, I'm testing out to be able to close a lot more homeowners at once. We're going to test out that system, but God given, if everything goes right on that, low end, I should be around 1.5 on that one, low end. So if executing properly.
There it goes. And so from 2017 to 2022, that's 5 years to do $500,000. That's beautiful. I'm definitely happy for your success. And so moving on to how do I want to phrase it? Do you think that you will ever branch out of South Florida or just Florida in general? Do you think you'll ever have contractors set up in like other states and just go global with it? Just teach other people effectively how to do what you do, but still be within your company?
So that's a great question. I thought about that. Um, First off, in Florida, there's more than enough work here for me, myself, everyone that wants to get into this business. But when it comes to other states, every state has their own laws. So as it pertains to other laws, for example, here in the state of Florida, you cannot repair more than 25% of a roof. At that point, thanks to the Florida State Building Code, then you need to turn it into, or they need to replace it completely. But for example, in South Carolina, that's not the case. So they can have mismatching shingles in a roof, and that looks like it's patched together, by the Cabbage Patch Kids or something like that. But but here you can't do that. So that's a benefit that we have here in Florida. In Texas is different, a little bit different as well. Now, now my system does benefit people in those states, Colorado as well. They get hailstorms. My system does work, and it does work for those people. But I much rather teach them the business so they can run with it on their own, right? Me, I'll be happy making my money here and taking that money and investing it into other endeavors, other projects that I'm more passionate about.
Okay,
I want to say
cool.
more passionate about that I've always wanted to do, and that now that luckily I have the ability to do so, that's why I would rather invest my money and time into. And then on this part, I figured out something, and now I learned that the next level of entrepreneurship is to pass that information and knowledge on to other people.
Got it, got it. Yeah, because I definitely see you're a car guy. I always see your car.
Car guy and music. Car. I would say my first love might have been cars. I'm not gonna lie. I remember my grandmother had a glass case shelf when I was younger. I think I was about 2 or 3 years old. My grandmother had a glass case shelf and had a bunch of sports cars like old school Jaguars, Mercedes, and things like that. And I asked my mother about that recently, a couple of years ago, and she said, "Yeah, you were like 2 years old." I was like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah, I remember seeing that. I remember I couldn't touch them either, but I just remember looking at them. I loved them. So I've loved cars ever since then, and then music ever since I knew what music was and I started learning how to figure out how to play it. That's when I was like, "Oh man, this is dope." So
Okay, and so last question.
yes.
Um, Scaling to this level of your business, do your friends and family treat you differently now versus when you worked at T-Mobile?
Well, yes and no. And that's a tough question. The reason why it's tough because I want to make sure I answer this in a sense that so I was never one that was really close with my family in that sense. But even though yes, I do love my mother with all my heart, um, I would say that for some members of my family, I am looked at now as the person to go to that's like a bank, even though they don't understand that I might be making money, but I'm reinvesting the majority of it. I don't keep all this money for myself. You know what I mean? So it's hard for them to understand, especially when they're not as financially literate or they're not learning about finances, personal finances. It's hard to educate them, which I don't have any issues with helping them out. But they do have to understand that there's a limit to that. So it hasn't made me estranged, but I wouldn't say so much the money is what the issue is. Is just when you're an entrepreneur and you're 100% focused on your goals and you're focused on so many different things. You have to deal with so many different people. You have messages coming in from Instagram, like you got emails coming in from 2 or 3 different email accounts, and you got text messages you got to deal with and all this stuff. So you might miss some phone calls or text messages and all that stuff. And so then they think that you're ignoring them. I'm like, no, it's not that. It's just I have to prioritize, what has to get handled right now. That way I can make the time to be able to, later on dedicate to you guys. Now that may or may not be the right way to go about it, but that's the path that I've chosen.
Okay. No, that's perfect. You know, as entrepreneurs, we all deal with that, and it's good to hear and see different people's perspectives on, how that takes a toll on their life and, their thoughts about that. But yeah, definitely, I really, really, really appreciate you for coming on to Attractive Mindset. As y'all can already tell, he has an attractive mindset, growing that business, jumping into a category that he had no idea about and being able to scale it to a $500,000 business is something that very little people get to do. You know, he might have said it smooth, he might have said it calm, but you have to understand that it does take consistency, discipline, and dedication to get to that level of business, especially in a field that you didn't go to college for. You didn't have any formal education training. Luckily, you definitely did have that network of a friend that was willing to pull that into you. And so that should just teach everybody that, you know, maintaining those type of friendships, the circle that you're around, is definitely going to be essential to get you into certain positions and get you to a whole nother level. And so, you know, I'm gonna definitely try to get him to do a discount on the master course. But if y'all definitely want to learn more about just, you know, the roofing industry and everything like that, as you can say, there's money to be made and there's not a lot of people that can do it. This is definitely the man that's going to teach you how to do that. And so hit subscribe, you know, definitely thank you for tuning in. But before we leave, where can everybody find you at?
Yeah, so the simplest place is just gonna be my IG, bro. So if you guys want to get any more information, hit me up on IG. It's gonna be at Brett Anthony Bryant, Brett Anthony, and then Bryant with the T, like the late great Kobe. No underscores or anything else like that. I know there's a few scam pages out there that are trying to make other pages similar to mine, but mine is just straight Brett Anthony Bryant. That's it.
Got it. And so thanks again. It's another episode of Attractive Mindset. We look good, we live good, life is good. Talk to us, we talk back. We out of here.
Hey.